I started diving, my first skydive was 1958, actually. I was a Green Beret at Fort Bragg, and I was making my third static line to go on free fall. And I jumped out of an L-20, and in those days, because we were still trying to learn the sport, we were still using static lines from T-10 paratrooper chutes. So I had a 18-foot static line, and the jump master had it flailing behind me. When I pushed off the airplane, it looped around my backpack. I fell about 10 feet, looked up, the airplane's still there. So I started twisting. I realized that I had to get that under control. I was going to lose consciousness. Meantime, the guys in the airplane are trying to figure out what to do because nobody has a knife. Well, I flew around about 10 minutes. One of the guys in the airplane opened up the medical kit, and because it was a Army airplane, it had a pair of bandage scissors in there. They showed me the bandage scissors. By then, I'd figured out how to stabilize myself with kind of a modified frog position. I pulled my arms in and got to where I could just fly below the aircraft. And they showed me the scissors, cut it. I pulled my emergency chute. It opened, and the wind had kicked up a little bit. I tried to figure out my trajectory where I was going to hit because they cut me loose over the trees instead of the drop zone at Fort Bragg. I looked my trajectory and I watched it go under me. And I looked ahead and watched it go under me. I said, well, I'm going to go into the trees. So they teach you in the airborne, go in the trees covering your armpits and putting your legs together so you don't straddle anything. So I went in the trees, big 50-foot North Carolina pine, and I snaked down through the tree, and I got about 15 feet off the ground and stopped. I said, God, made it. Shock waves went back up the suspension lines. The top of the tree broke. I felt myself falling. I fell about 15 feet, stiff-legged it because I hit a shock, fractured my third lumbar. The top of the tree came down and put about a 6-inch scar in the side of my face. So I laid there for a minute and finally got up, could get a breath. So the first thing I did was light up a cigarette. And I was sitting there smoking, and then finally I said, well, because they're coming for me in a Jeep because I'm way the hell out in the middle of the forest. I had to get my chute together, and some of the suspension lines from under the reserve, or from the reserve, were still under my main backpack, which was a B4 backpack with three pins. And when I moved it, it opened and the pilot chutes popped out. Had that happened, had that chute opened while I was still connected to the plane, everybody on the plane would have gone down. And in those days, the pilots, they had chutes, but they're sitting on them. You know, they would have had a chance. I would have torn out the whole side of the airplane, probably an eighth of an inch. So they came out and got me, took me to the hospital. I recovered. I kept skydiving. About 9 months later, 18 jumps later, I'm jumping again, and we were making jumping poles. By this time, I think I had maybe 35 jumps. We were jumping, pulling, and because it was low cloud cover, and the guy in front of me jumped. He was a captain. I jumped right behind him, and when we opened, we were both facing each other. And I had a chute that had what they call a Bulgarian modification, where we stretched the lower lateral band 30 inches and just folded. So when the blank gore opened up, it was 30 inches wider. Believe it or not, that was the hottest thing going back in '59. So what happened when I pulled down on the lines, since we were almost the same altitude, he came right through my open gore. And the next thing I know, all his lines and he are through my open gore, and we're looking at each other. And he panicked. So it's just like being with somebody who's drowning. He's trying to grab me, and I'm, God damn it, let go of me, Captain, let go of me. You know, I'll take care of it. I reached up, I shook the suspension lines, and both chutes collapsed. His chute collapsed, so he came down. We just started to attach the sleeve. We just started to attach sleeves. Before then, they would blow off. You'd have to go find them. We lost a lot of them. So a guy named Lloyd Bryden said, well, you know, we can put this little piece of suspension cord which will play out when it deploys, and we can, bring him down with a chute. So what happened when he came through, the sleeve wrapped around my lower lateral band. So it was him, his chute, my chute, and me in that order, and we're making it for terra firma. So I swung over the chute. Because of the tension, the chute broke. I think it's 550 tensile. The suspension line snapped. I flew over my chute. He's in a full streamer. I'm about maybe 20 feet above him looking at him, and I'm in a full streamer. He opens. I shot right by him. I got a reopening at about 50 feet off the ground in a full streamer. Oscillated twice, landed, picked up my stuff, walked over to him. He looked at me and he says, "God damn, McCarthy." He said, "That's the closest thing out here since that guy got towed under the aircraft." I said, "Sir, that was me." He said, "McCarthy, if I were you, I'd find a new sport." Well, I went on to make another 400 jumps. But that's the way I started. And both times, I think I was the first guy to be towed under the aircraft in sport parachuting. It happened in military parachuting, of course. But I was the first guy in sport parachuting. I was the first guy to ever have a full entanglement. And they were both in '59.
Now I see here that you were you were part of the first instructor examiner conference in 1962.
That was 62.
Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, Russ Gumby, who was the executive director of the USPA, he pulled together about, I think there were 30 of us from around the U.S. And we had, Lou Sanborn was there, Jacques Estelle was there, Lloyd Bryden, D-51, Danny Byard, a lot of guys from the U.S. Army team, and then a lot of civilian skydivers like myself, a lot of guys from California. And it was 3 days of really how to teach parachuting, by the book. I was one of the guys that signed off on the first parachute regulations from the PCA. And they just got, and actually Danny Byard, who was D-51, was my student. I had to take him up and, put him through the whole routine and then jump him, and he graded me while I did it. And everybody got graded by somebody who was experienced and critiqued when we got back on the ground. And it was really cool. And that was the first time, and then they've done it several, of course, getting your instructors rating, you know what that entails now. Well, since we were the first instructors, they also made us examiners. So we became instructors and examiners at the same time. It was pretty cool.
Most of your jumps were round jumps, but you did jump a square?
I jumped a square, yeah. Jumped a square, I think, the first time, I think it was down at Gene Paul Thacker's, and Tony and Tim, his kids. I came down from New York. I hadn't jumped for 9 years, and they said, "Oh, come on, we've got a big parachute." So they put me under a mantra or something. And I jumped 3 times, and then I kind of got back into it I made probably 20. My last jump was 5 years ago. And then, of course, all the later jumps were all squares. But we had some, the hottest thing we had going in my day when I was really active as a skydiver was a 7-gore TU, which had been invented by Lloyd Bryden, D-51, who's a guy who belongs in the Hall of Fame. He's not alive any longer, but he absolutely belongs. Maybe next year we can get him.
Now, one more question. If someone's at the museum right now and they happen to, get to see this segment, not a skydiver, somebody that's just at the museum to see what it's all about, what would you say to them if they're considering making a skydive or thinking about trying skydive, either to encourage them to make a skydive or how you think it might affect them if they make a skydive? What would you say to that person?
Well, there's no greater thrill than jumping out of an airplane. And anybody that can muster the courage to jump out of an airplane is going to learn to control their fear. They learn it right on that spot. And anybody that doesn't know how to control their fear is going to have difficulty in life. And anybody who does is going to make it easier. My wife made a 45-second tandem 4 years ago. She's a Filipino. She's 4 feet 8 inches tall. And it really changed her life. So I highly recommend it.